Every year, InterNations releases its Expat Insider survey, where it reveals the results of a survey where it speaks to its members within the InterNations community, as well as other expats living in other countries around the world, to find out what they truly think and feel about the country they've chosen to move to. Now, it's worth noting that, of course, this survey is very subjective. It's based on an individual's own personal perceptions and beliefs rather than any statistical data. However, it does give you a bit of an insight as to what people truly think and feel about the country that they're living in. And it can give you some food for thought as to whether or not the country you're planning on moving to is really going to be the right one for you. Now, just over a year ago, I will link it up here, I recorded a video where I analysed the 2023 report. And today I've decided to look at the most recent report that's on their website for 2025, and we're going to see if much has changed in the 2 years since. And also I want to reflect a little bit on my own take on these results, coming at it from nearly 8 years of experience having lived in this country and gone through quite a lot during that time. Now, a couple of things I want to say to you though before you watch this video. First of all, please remember that no two people's experiences will ever be the same. This report is subjective. We all have different beliefs, different outlooks, different takes on life. So what doesn't work for one person may very well work for you. So just keep that in mind. But also, secondly, use this as a springboard for further research. If you realise that there's an aspect of life in Italy that isn't ranking very highly, look into that a little bit more. Do some research online, understand a little bit more why that area isn't working so well or isn't ranking as highly as it should do, to be able to understand if Italy is going to be the country for you. And if you want to be surrounded by other people whilst you are going through this process, so that you're not doing it all on your own and you've got people to bounce ideas off, myself included, then you might want to check out my aperitif or lounge community as well. We've got a thriving community of people in there, all super keen on moving to Italy. Some have already made the move, and we are there sharing our experiences and helping each other on the journey. So I'll put a link up here and also below if you're interested. Okay, so we're going to begin with the profile of an average expat here in Italy. Now, it's no surprise really, the average age is 48 years old, and this is actually an increase compared to 2023 when it was actually 44.7 years. I see the average age of expats in Italy, or people who choose to move to Italy, I'm not so much a fan of expat anymore, increasing year upon year really, because the thing with Italy is that it is a great country. There is so much here. But I think if you're moving here as a younger person, sometimes there are more barriers to entry, to opportunities and to the things that you really want to do. I feel like moving here later in life, when you've already got some experience under your belt, maybe you're already set up with a career or you are retiring, tends to be the more popular option, and one that I probably would agree with as well. Now, in terms of the gender split, 40% of people living in Italy who are expats are male and 60% are female. This hasn't really changed from 2023 actually. The split has remained pretty much the same. So has the top reasons for moving. The percentages are a little bit different. So for example, in 2023, it was 21% of expats that said they moved to Italy to go to school or university. Now it's just 19%. And 12% for love, whereas in 2023 it was 16%. So that's a decrease. And then we have this new category that wasn't actually on the 2023 report. 10% moved to Italy to apply for or find a job here. Now, this surprises me a little bit, I'm going to be honest, because I've made no secret of the fact that finding a job in Italy can be difficult. Now, I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I am the living proof of the fact that coming from the UK, I found a job and I've been working here since the moment I stepped foot off the plane. So it would be hypocritical of me to sit here and say it's impossible, because it wasn't for me. But what I will say is that I chose to go down the route of becoming an English teacher, which tends to be a more feasible option for people moving to Italy. It's a little easier to go down that route than it would be if I were to do something more specialist. So it surprises me a little bit that this is here, but then it depends on the sector. We don't have access to that data, so we have no idea what jobs they applied for. But I would say teaching would definitely be a preferable career to look into. Of course, it does depend on visas, okay? This is something that you must consider. Not every language school will consider sponsoring you for a visa if you come from outside of the EU or you are not an Italian citizen. So you've got to look into that. But I would definitely say in terms of jobs, teaching is a good option to consider. Now, in terms of of the top sectors, here we are, 16% education. And it's exactly the same as 2023, but it has increased because in 2023, 14% of people were working within the education system. So just kind of sums up everything that I've just said already. It is the easiest route to entry to finding a job in Italy. Now here we've got no change really in terms of the percentages, 7% manufacturing and engineering and 7% in finance. But what is different is that these two have both moved up a little since 2023, because in 2023 we actually had advertising, marketing and communication as the second top sector. So it's interesting, things are shifting a little bit, but essentially the main areas of employment have stayed pretty much the same in the past 2 years. Now, in terms of planning to leave, this is a new category that wasn't in the 2023 report, but 41% of expats are unsure if they plan to leave or not. 26% want to stay forever and 11% plan to leave within the next 5 years. Now, this is an interesting category and I'm going to give my take on this because the reason why I think people are uncertain, and there's quite a high percentage of people who are uncertain about whether Italy is right for them or not, is because it's a complicated country and you have to have the right mindset to live here. And I'm honest with you, because if you move here and you want systems to be easy and processes to be smooth, you're going to come unstuck very, very quickly because it's just not the way life is here. You have to be willing to accept life for the way it is and to go with the flow. And a lot of people are not. And so they remain in this period of indecision as to like what to do next because they are not really fully able to adjust to the way of life here. 26% want to stay forever. This is nice. I think these are the people that have actually accepted Italy for what it is. They understand it's imperfect and actually it suits them to stay here. I think as we progress through the years into the future, I think this number will increase because let's face it, there's no perfect country around the world. And when you've spent enough time living in your own country before moving to Italy, sometimes you're able to appreciate the differences in Italy even more because they could be significantly better than what you've experienced in your own country. And then you've got 11% who plan to leave within the next 5 years. These, of course, are people who have become disillusioned, but not necessarily so. It could also be people whose visas are expiring, or maybe they are here just for a set time because they are studying. And then after that, they plan to take their education elsewhere and work in another country. So this could be for a number of different reasons, but disillusionment is definitely one of the possibilities. If people realise that Italy hasn't brought them what they expected, then absolutely, this could be a reason why they plan to leave. But I think doing your research, doing your due diligence, really understanding the intricacies and nuances of life in Italy will help you to fit more into this category than into the unsure category. I think if you plan to leave within the next 5 years, you've got some kind of ulterior motive or reason for doing so. But it can stop you from feeling disillusioned if you do enough research and you really, truly understand Italy on a much deeper level. Now we're going to look at how expats rank the different aspects of life here in Italy. Now, I have to be honest, this report for 2025 was a little more concise compared to the one for 2023, but the categories are still the same, and we're going to talk about these. Overall ranking. Now, in 2023, there were 53 countries included in this survey. In 2025, there were 46. However, what hasn't changed is the fact that Italy has consistently ranked towards the bottom end. So in 2023, it ranked 47th out of 53 countries to live in. And in 2025, 47th out of 46. So always towards the bottom in terms of how expats view their quality of life and aspects of life in general. We're going to look at quality of life. This has actually moved up a little bit. So in 2023, it was 33 out of 53. Now it is 28th out of 46. Now, this is an interesting one because I think Italy is so complicated to judge on a whole, and it really depends on where the expats who completed this survey actually live in Italy as to the kind of ranking they're going to give this country for quality of life. I've always said it to you, the southern parts of Italy will give you a higher quality of life in some respects, in terms of lower cost of living, predominantly being by the sea, having like beautiful places to live, and, you know, like people being very warm and friendly. But of course, it can give you a lower quality of life when it comes to infrastructure, employment opportunities, and maybe even just like adjusting to life in the south. Whereas if you live in the more central and northern parts, you might have a higher quality of life when it comes to leisure options, work prospects, things like this. So I feel like this really does depend on what part of Italy these people live in. But nevertheless, travel and transit has moved up a little. It was the ranked 27th in 2023, and now it is number 26. I would say with travel and transit, again, it depends where you live. In the south of Italy, as I've always said, the transport infrastructure isn't the best. It really does depend where you are, but it can be pretty unreliable in parts. The more northern parts of Italy tend to have better infrastructure in place, but I do see improvements. For example, even in Salerno, they are working on more high-speed rail routes, and I can see that they are trying to invest more money into this. So it's a positive thing that this is actually increasing in terms of quality of life rather than decreasing. Environment and climate is another one that has actually increased since 2023. In 2023, it was ranked 34. Out of 53. Now it is ranked 26 out of 46. Now, these scores, all of them are pretty average. None of them are anything to write home about pretty much when it comes to quality of life. But environment and climate, I do feel like people appreciate that some parts of Italy can feel very clean and organised. Like recycling is huge in a lot of Italy, not in all parts, sadly, but in the majority of Italy, people recycle and they respect the environment. And there's more being done by businesses here to create more sustainable conditions. So I would say that there is a higher focus on environment and climate now, especially into 2026. But of course, it's not the same for all parts of Italy. When I lived in Sicily, there was a huge problem with the rubbish, with the trash. People didn't always recycle, especially in the main city itself. And you can have one city that, because it is organised in different ways, people do different things within the same city. It's not necessarily a uniform approach. So I think that can be a problem as well. Now, if we look at leisure options, in 2023, this was ranked 17th. So it was definitely higher. Now it's ranked 22. Now, again, I think it depends where you live, but leisure options are, of course, all your amenities and services to be able to live your life, the ability to go out and do things, have activities and hobbies and things like this. I would say that Italy is fantastic for this. Wherever you live in Italy, you can find something to do. It might mean you have to travel. It really depends on where you are. But essentially, generally speaking, there is, of course, thriving culture here when it comes to history, arts, music. It's fantastic, and you can definitely find things to do here if you want to. So I think this really depends on where you are. Now, healthcare. In 2023, it was ranked 31. Now it is ranked 23. So this is showing signs of improvement and people actually feeling more confident in the healthcare system. I would say that thankfully, touch wood, and I'm literally trying to find every piece of wood I can, I've not had to use the healthcare system very much living here in Italy. But I have to be honest with you, apart from a lengthy delay at one point when I needed to have a hospital appointment in Palermo, my experiences of the healthcare system haven't been bad. I don't really have a super negative experience to say. Maybe the customer service isn't the best at points, particularly in the busy hospital environments, but it's not bad. Okay, it's what you expect of it. And certainly if you don't like the kind of national healthcare, you can go private. And all my experiences within the private healthcare system have been positive. So I think this is why healthcare has ranked a little higher this time round. Now, when it comes to safety and security, this is an interesting one because in 2023, it was actually ranked 37, but now it is 29. So it's increased a little bit. What I would say about this, though, is that I have the opposite feeling about life in Italy now. I think things are changing, and I think it does depend where you are, and it does depend on what you do with your everyday life. But I'm starting to see definitely an upsurge in crimes, especially here in the south of Italy. I noticed it a lot in Palermo. There were a lot of crimes, burglaries, robberies, thefts, things like this that were happening around Palermo when I lived there. But also now in the Salerno province, I'm starting to read of a lot more things happening here when before, when I lived in Salerno city, I didn't notice it as much. So I feel like this is changing. I personally have always felt safe here, but I think in general, things are changing in society. People are struggling, and as such, people turn to crime when they struggle. And so I feel like this is reflective of society on a whole. But personally, I've always felt safe, but I do think it depends on where you live. which is why you have to be so careful about where you choose in terms of your location. So this is your quality of life. Now let's talk about working abroad, because of course, this is where Italy has ranked terribly, 42nd out of 46. Now, this is actually, believe it or not, a slight increase, because last time Italy in 2023 ranked 52 out of 53. Career prospects, 42. In 2023, it was 52. Okay, so I don't know. I feel with this career prospects, it all depends on what you plan to move here to do. I think it's very easy for people to say, and you will hear so many Italian people say, look, why are you moving here to work? Italians leave the country or they go to other parts of the country to work, like you're crazy. You will hear this a lot, but I think it all depends on what your specialisms are. There are some, specialist jobs here that require people from other countries to come and work in those roles. And so, in that case, you could have quite good career prospects. However, what I will say about this is that you may not have the progression when you're within your career that you might be used to in your own country. Like, I can be honest about my job. My job as an English teacher, I will always forever be at this role, at this rate of pay for the entire time that I stay in this job. There is nowhere else I can go. I've hit my glass ceiling. And that's a common thing for a lot of people in this country. So you have to think about it from that perspective. You might be able to find a job, sure, but you may not be able to go as far in the job as you had wanted to. So that's what you've got to think about. Now, in terms of salary and job security, this ranked 50 in 2023 and here has ranked 40. So we've got a slight increase. What I would say is that salary here, just don't get your hopes up. It does depend on where in the country you are. So again, if they are talking to people who live in the south of Italy, this would make a lot of sense because salaries here tend to be a lot lower than the rest of the country. Job security, though, I think it depends on the job that you have, because if you have what is known as an indeterminato work contract, these are the gold dust of contracts here in Italy. If you have one of those, you can be certain that it's not going to be easy for you to lose that job unless the company folds and no longer trades. So I feel from that angle, if you manage to get a job with that kind of contract, you're in a very good position. But the problem is a lot of people are issued determinato contracts and they're issued them for a couple of years. And the problem with that is that they don't really offer you much stability. They are like yearly renewals if you're lucky, and the company is under no obligation to renew it. Of course, at some point, as I've said before in other videos, that will have to be transformed into an indeterminato contract if you continue to do the same role within the company. But at the beginning, it can feel like your job security is lacking. I can understand that. And it's certainly how I felt when I started jobs here with a determinato contract. Now, work and leisure. This ranked 46 in 2023 and here ranks 37 in 2025. I actually think, and I'm going to be honest with you here, that people spend a lot of time working here in Italy. Certainly everybody I know here is always working. And some people are working until late at night, like until 10 p.m. Some companies don't have boundaries with their staff. And as such, people are working long past dinner time. So I do get this kind of feeling that it's difficult sometimes for people to find a balance between work and leisure here. You will find that, weekends tend to be sacred for this very reason, but then some people also have to work at weekends. It's a much harder working life here than you may imagine it to be. And so I can understand why this doesn't rank particularly highly in that regard. Now, when it comes to work culture and satisfaction, well, this ranked 49 in 2023 and has ranked 41 in 2025. Working culture here takes a little bit of getting used to. In fact, I would say nearly 8 years in, points I still struggle with understanding and adapting to the working culture here, because there are many things that I don't really understand. I don't understand why people don't communicate enough within corporate environments and business environments. I don't understand why there isn't enough team building activities and training exercises given to people to help them to improve their skills. I don't understand this very old-fashioned them and us attitude that still exists a lot within businesses here in Italy. So I think it takes time to adapt to the working culture here. And as such, that impacts the satisfaction that you feel about your work. I mean, if you're in a job, taking it back to career prospects, where you're never going to progress and your salary is always going to stay the same and you don't have any kind of like ladder that you can climb, that's going to impact the satisfaction that you feel. So a lot of these are intertwined as to why it hasn't ranked overall very well. Now, ease of settling in, 24th out of 46 in 2025. In 2023, it was 28 out of 53. So this is an increase. Now, local friendliness, in 2023, it ranked 29. Here, it has ranked 25. Again, I would say it really depends where you live. This is why I think for Italy, this kind of survey can be quite misleading, because if you're in the south of Italy, 100%, you're going to have some good interactions with people here. I've never had a problem interacting with people here in the south of Italy. They've always been really accommodating and welcoming to me. Of course, I've come across the odd rude person and ignorant person. It happens, absolutely. But overall, my interactions with people have been friendly. It takes time, but you do arrive at that point. When it comes to the northern parts of Italy, though, a lot of people will tell me that people are less friendly. It takes longer to build those connections. And so it really does depend on where you are in Italy. I would say if you're in a smaller community, if you're in a bigger city, this is all going to impact as to the interactions you're going to have with people. And this kind of connects into finding friends, which ranks 27 on this year's survey. And in 2023, it ranked 29. So, a slight improvement. Finding friends, Italy is all about who you know. Right? I'm no stranger in saying that to you all. And I would say that this does depend on where you live. Some cities, some places have thriving communities of people, fellow expats, fellow foreigners who have moved to Italy, where you can start to build your initial connections. Other cities and towns, less so. So you have to make more of an effort to be able to find people that you might make friends with, whether that's through cultural groups or hobby groups or whatever it may be. So again, it just really depends on where you are. And I feel like I'm just going to keep repeating this phrase throughout this whole survey because it's so difficult to paint Italy with one brush. Now, culture and welcome. This ranked 27 in 2023 and it's ranked 21 in 2025. This is, I would say, like one of Italy's strengths in terms of its culture. Italy is so proud of its culture and I love learning more about it every single day. You will see people full of love and hometown pride for where they live, where they grew up and their country on a whole. You experience it through the different sagre that you go to in the summer and in the warmer months where they're displaying all their traditional cuisine and food typical to that area. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think Italians are so proud of their country, which is why I understand that they can get a little bit defensive if people have anything negative to say about it. But it's not to say that Italians don't criticize their country, because trust me, they really, really do. Now, personal finance. This ranked 40 out of 53 in 2023, and it's 26 out of 46 in 2025. So this is, of course, an improvement. I think a lot of this might be, though, because depending on where you are in Italy, the cost of living is lower. Now, it's not to say things aren't going to change. The economy is constantly in flux. But I will say to you that if you were to compare like a place here in the south of Italy to move to, the cost of eating out, the cost of renting a home or buying a home even, the cost of your everyday expenses could be far lower than what you're used to paying. Like for sure, the home I live in now, I would never find at the price I paid for it in London. So I can really and truly understand that, your money does go a little bit further here in Italy, depending on where you are. The north of Italy, in my opinion, certain parts are extremely inflated, like Milan, for example. Your money definitely does not stretch as further there. It's an interesting one. I think it depends as well. If you're moving here and you already have a nest egg of money behind you, then of course you're going to feel a lot more secure than if you are working here and you are living here on an Italian salary, which isn't the highest, as we have already looked at under the working abroad category. And so as a result, you may not feel as secure in your financial situation. Now, in terms of Expat Essentials, again, this is a pretty low ranking, 43rd out of 46. And in 2023, it was a similar kind of story, 51 out of 53. Now, digital life is a thing that most people find difficult here. It ranked 40, and in 2023, it ranked 48. It's not easy sometimes to do things online in Italy. I have to be honest with you. You'll have websites, you'll have online services, but whether they work all the time is a whole other story. Consider, and I'm going to give you a real life example. I had to send a parcel and I decided to use the app for the post office here in Italy to be able to send it. And I went through the process of going through the app, measuring the parcel, weighing the parcel, doing all of the things so that all I'd have to do is turn up at the post office, show them the QR code, and then they print the label and I go. I've already paid for it. I've already managed it. Wonderful. Except the app crashed a couple of times when I was doing it. And then when I eventually got to the payment page, I paid for the parcel and then the app completely crashed. I didn't have any kind of email receipt. And I spent 10 minutes in panic thinking I've just paid for something, but I don't know if it's gone through. And then I eventually got the email confirmation. This is very normal here. Not everything works the way it does. If you need to organize your bureaucracy online, that doesn't always work online. You know, different cities, different comune, different regions, all operate differently. What works one way in one place will work very differently in another. So it can be stressful. I completely understand why it's ranked so lowly. Now, admin topics, 46. Oh my gosh, the lowest score. There we are. And, you know, last report in 2023, it was 52. So slightly better maybe because it was only one below the bottom. Here it is like bottom. And yeah, I get it. I don't feel like I need to say anymore. I've been so honest with all of you about the bureaucracy in this country. It's crazy. Doesn't make a lot of sense a lot of the time. Processes here are so long. There's always a piece of paper that you've got to fill in. That makes no sense because you're like, why do you tie yourself in knots with all of this paperwork? The processes don't feel seamless. So I completely understand why it's ranked so low. You have to have loads of patience. You've just got to accept things for the way that they are. That's the only way you'll cope with the admin side of life here. Now, when it comes to housing, this is ranked 33 this year. And in 2023, it actually ranked 37. So this is an increase. What I would say about housing is that I don't find it too bad. I think the cost of housing really depends on where you live, absolutely. But I would say that this is a situation in flux, shall we say, because the housing market is starting to become a little bit more expensive in certain places that before were cheaper. Tourism is, of course, having an impact on that. And I think it's fair to say that if you look at like the cost of housing in Salerno, that has definitely increased in recent years as a result of this factor. You've got the whole Airbnb situation, which is kind of outpricing locals in terms of finding housing, but also in terms of being able to find reasonable housing at that. So I feel like this situation is in flux. It will constantly change. But overall, I have found housing to be reasonable here in the south of Italy, definitely. Some cities are changing, as I've just touched on before. But yeah, definitely more reasonable than what I've been used to back in the UK. Now, language, this was ranked 30 in 2025, and actually it ranked 38 in 2023. So a slight improvement in the 2025 survey. This is a huge factor. And, you know, I've spoken about it so much because English is not widely spoken. You are going to have to put the work in to speak Italian to get by and to survive life here. Don't be naive like I was when I moved here and only had like a few basic words. You need to be able to converse, to be able to survive things here. And that is just it. There's nothing more I can say. It would be wonderful if more people spoke English. And, you know, I guess if they did, I wouldn't have a job. So, you know, there's that to consider. But it is just the way things are here. Everything is done in Italian. I feel like sometimes this can be quite limiting because it means that, you know, if people want to open themselves up a little bit and learn, you know, another language, and they don't really have the possibility to practice English here as much. But this is the way it is in this country. So you just have to accept it, I guess. Now, general happiness. This wasn't actually, oh no, it was on the 2023 survey, but they did it differently. It was like 71% in 2023. Here, they've ranked it out of the 46 countries. And again, it's somewhere in the middle, 26th out of 46. What I would say about this is that this is, of course, subjective. Depends on your mindset, depends on your outlook, depends on why you're living in Italy in the first place, depends on what you hope to gain from your experience. It depends on so many different factors that are very, very personal. I would say that Italy can bring you the joy but you have to be ready and open to accept it. And sometimes it comes in the most unexpected moments. It can be the joy of the beauty of this country. It can be the joy in that you are finally living a life that is what you've always wanted. It can be the joy in the simple pleasures. It's very, very nuanced, this term happiness, and super, super subjective, which is why I think it sits somewhere in the middle, because Italy is problematic, as we all know, and as such, it's not easy to feel happy 100% of the time here. However, how you approach those problems definitely impacts the happiness levels that you have. So I think that is the thing that you need to consider. And overall, I would say with this survey, take it with a pinch of salt, because as I've said, it is judged very much based on personal opinion, but look at those aspects of life that don't rank very highly. See if it's something that you could be happy to live with, because essentially all of these aspects are going to play a huge part into your experiences here in Italy, and you want to be sure that Italy is the right country for you.